But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Don't you love it? He just calls them hypocrites right to their faces in front of the crowd. Woe to you, you hypocrites. For you shut the kingdom of heaven in people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter to go in. It's like they're stopping people from having faith. Here Jesus is the one that they need to have faith in, and they're trying to stop them from having faith in him. And he's saying, woe to you. You're not going into the kingdom. You think you're going into the kingdom, but you're not. And I mean, that is a bold thing to say. Verse 15, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. You travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte, a convert. And when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. I mean, it's like you're wasting your time. You're traveling over land and sea to win just one convert. And when you get that one convert, you make him a child of hell, just like yourselves. And the Pharisees actually did that. They set up synagogues in other countries, other towns, and they try to convert people to Judaism and try to convert them to the law, keeping all the commandments, the traditions, and people would convert. And Jesus is saying, those that convert, they're not getting saved. They're not entering into the kingdom. They're becoming children of hell because their religion can't save them. It's going to take them to hell. Verse 16, woe to you, blind guides, who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath. You blind fools! For which is greater, the gold or the temple that makes the gold sacred? And you say, if anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift that is on the altar, he is bound by his oath. You blind men! For which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it, and whoever swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. Basically, the Pharisees, they would swear on material things, on gold, on the sacrifice, on heaven, but they failed to see where those things get their value from. The gold in the temple gets its value from the temple. The temple is what makes it sacred. The altar is what makes the sacrifice sacred. Heaven is God, is what makes heaven sacred. So Pharisees were very caught up with material things and were actually so disconnected from God. And so they would swear on material things and not actually on sacred things. And so their swearing and their oaths were empty oaths. They didn't actually carry much meaning. And because they didn't recognize where the value was, because they didn't know God, they didn't recognize God. And Jesus, he just rebukes them for being so blind and being such hypocrites. I love it. Verse 23, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. You blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. You get so caught up on the little details of the law and doing all the right things and making sure you've measured out just the right amount of tithe. And he's saying, but you've forgotten about the weightier matters of the law, which is justice, mercy, faithfulness. That is the greatest command that Jesus is talking about. Love, that is a fulfillment of the law. He's saying, yes, you should have done all the other things, but actually the most important part is loving people. It's justice, it's mercy, but actually you don't even care about those things. You get so caught up in the little details of right and wrong. Are you doing the right thing and being all external? It's like you strain a gnat out of your drink. Meanwhile, there's a huge big camel in there. Your religion completely misses the point and it fails to deliver God to people. Verse 25, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup and the plate, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisees, first clean the outside of the cup and the plate, that the outside may be clean. And this sums up the Pharisees so well. They're so concerned about the external and looking clean on the outside and doing all the right things and being holy and righteous on the outside, but on the inside, they're dirty. That's why they're all concerned about rituals and washing your hand. And Jesus said, it's not what goes into the mouth, it's what comes out of the heart. That's what makes you dirty. And so Jesus is saying, no, first clean the inside and then the outside will be clean. First believe in Jesus, be born again, have your heart changed. Let the blood of Jesus come and clean your heart, make you holy, make you righteous through his gift and make you clean. Then the outside will become clean. But they get so preoccupied with the outside and they neglect the inside is dirty. And so while they're fooling everyone on the outside, oh, it's so clean, actually Jesus, God sees the heart, the inside. And listen to what he says is in your heart. But inside, they are full of greed and self-indulgence. And he just exposed to all of Israel what's actually in the heart of the Pharisees: greed and self-indulgence. Self-indulgence, that is sinfulness, very sinful behavior. Yet they're fooling everyone thinking that they're so holy. Jesus, he sees what's really going on. And don't get impressed by religious people that act so holy, holier than thou, and they condemn you and make you feel condemned that you've got some sin in your life. I tell you what, you scratch around in their life a little bit, scratch under the surface, you'll find all kinds of greed and self-indulgence. I tell you, when God changes your heart, you won't be judgmental of other people. You won't be acting so holier than thou. You will just be worshiping Jesus, just in awe of his grace, so thankful for his grace, and you'll be loving other people and helping them. You'll be extending grace. You won't be extending judgment to them. But that's what the Pharisees did. And they were just absolutely terrible. And Jesus is just calling them on all of their stuff. Verse 27, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. So you also outwardly appear righteous to others, but within you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Oh man, that is awesome. They're like whitewashed tombs. In those days they would just, and in our days as well, we decorate tombs. We make them look beautiful, flowers, all this decoration. In those days they would put whitewash over all of them like a paint. It looks white. It looks so clean. He said, that's what you're like. On the outside, you're like a whitewashed tomb, but on the inside, you're full of death. And then he says you're full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. And also that you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. You claim to be so lawful and honoring the law, but actually on the inside, you're dead and you're lawless. You're full of sin, self-indulgence, greedy. And I just, come on, Jesus, come on, right, left, uppercut. He's just throwing everything at them and just knocking them to pieces. Verse 29, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers. How are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Whoa, Jesus, ease up, man. Don't you know this is offending the Pharisees? Don't you know they're going to kill you? Oh, he was provoking them on purpose. He knew exactly what he was doing. But I tell you, it takes guts. Sometimes it takes guts to stand up to religion and religious people and the demonic realm that is behind religion and inciting people to persecute those who have a revelation of grace. Sometimes it takes guts to stand up against them. And if you want to find a great example, a hero, look at Jesus. And see, a lot of the times we say, oh no, you've got to be so nice to people. And I love Jesus. He's just not nice. I mean, he's loving and he's kind and he's caring, but he's not nice. And he wasn't politically correct. And he wasn't a cuddly little teddy bear. Sometimes he was the lion of the tribe of Judah, and he roared, and he showed his teeth, and he showed his claws, and he ripped shreds out of people. and he bit people's heads off, and he made a whip, and he whipped people and drove them out of the temple, and he kicked over tables. This isn't some weak little man. This is a awesome man, and he came as a man to die as a man for mankind and to show us what we can be like when we are full of the Spirit, walking in faith. He says, the works I do, you will do, and greater works. And I never thought about that in the context of rebuking religious people. But hey, I'm not going out looking for it. I mean, because, you got to be wise. Like Jesus, he operated privately, and when it was his time, then he went public. And so, there are consequences for doing this kind of a thing. I love the fact that Jesus wasn't a pushover, and he wasn't a big softy. He was a real man, and he was a strong man, and he had grit, and he was driven by righteous indignation. This wasn't a temper tantrum. This wasn't just some unhinged rant that he was having. This was coming from God. This was full of God. This was full of fire, full of anointing. Every word he spoke came from heaven. And I tell you, it's okay for us to rebuke people, to confront people, to speak the truth, and to speak the truth in love. And it doesn't mean that you're mean and you're harsh and you're horrible. Actually, it means that you love people and you care about people. And so, but you got to be wise. Jesus knew when to be the lion, and he knew when to be the lamb. He knew when he needed to be hard and harsh and strong, and he knew when he needed to be gentle and a tender shepherd. And he just moved like that with such wisdom and grace. And, if we want to be like Christ, we need to learn how to move with his same kind of wisdom. Verse 34, therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will flog in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, so that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. And again, I don't believe he's speaking about AD 70 and that wrath. I believe he's speaking about the end of the age. And this generation is the generation of these unbelieving leaders that murdered prophets and murdered Christians and make martyrs of people because they are in unbelief, and they have stubborn hearts of unbelief, evil hearts of unbelief, and they resist God, and they rejected Christ, and they reject his servants, and they actually persecute them and kill them. And they're not working for God, they're working against God, and they're not saved, they're on their way to hell. And so all the blood of these righteous people before them, he's saying all of it is going to rest on them. And that's not an AD 70, that is at the end of the age, when God holds people to account for the things they did in this world. Those that believe in Christ, have received Christ, then all of their sins have been forgiven. And you could have been one of these people that killed the prophets, like Paul the Apostle. He was there at the murdering of Stephen, and he went around persecuting the church, one of the greatest persecutors of the church, killing people in the name of God. Paul was one of these people, and yet he encountered Jesus, called him Lord, fell at his feet, and he got saved. And then he went out and preached the gospel in all the Gentile nations, and he understood the grace of God, and he got saved. All of his sins were forgiven. And so it's people that continue to resist Jesus, who die without surrendering their life to Christ. They are the ones who will be sentenced to hell. And then Jesus, after all of this, he laments over Jerusalem. You hear his heart for these Jewish people, for Jerusalem. This is the heart of God and the heart of Jesus. He says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it, how often I would have gathered your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'" So this is the heart of Jesus for Israel, for Jerusalem. They were rejecting God. God wanted to gather them. God doesn't want to destroy them, cut them off. He wants to gather them and love them and forgive them and wash them with his blood. But many are rejecting him, and actually it breaks God's heart. And he's saying, ultimately, if you continue to reject me, it's going to end in destruction for you. Now, possibly that part, your house is left to you desolate, that could refer to AD 70, because Israel and Jerusalem was decimated by the Romans. It was destroyed, it was burnt. And so perhaps it could be referring to that. Or it could just mean that because you've rejected Christ, ultimately you're going to face total destruction, total desolation. It could refer to that. And then he says, I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And so that could be referring to his death and then his resurrection. He gets taken away and crucified. He knows that the Pharisees are about to do that to him. And to the crowd, he was saying, but you'll see me again. You're not going to see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Talking about after he's raised from the dead, and they will see him again. Or it could be referring to the end of the age, that as he returns, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. So there is debate on exactly how you fit these into a timeline, but I just love the chapter, and Jesus absolutely decimates the Pharisees. He shuts them down completely, and I love his boldness, and I love the way that he exposes them to Israel. I'm sure after that, like Israel would have, as he's saying this, they would have been looking at the Pharisees, looking back at Jesus, and just being stunned and shocked that he's doing this. But at the same time, it was opening their eyes, and hopefully they were beginning to see the truth. After this, the Pharisees came and they took him and crucified him, and perhaps that's what he was alluding to, that I'll be taken and you won't see me, but you know what? I'm going to come back, I'm going to rise, and you're going to say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And so he was giving them hope again. And I'm sure after his resurrection, they would have started to put it all together and everything he was saying, and they would have fully realized this is the Son of God. And we know that the early church grew large in numbers. So many people here in the crowd would have actually been born again and become part of the early church. So what an awesome chapter.